Hello and welcome to The Wise Why. We're back. And this week, actually, I've got no idea where this is going to go because I'm with
Where's
Mark
it going to go,
Channon.
Kirsty?
I'm with Mark Channon, who actually I knew as Mark Wood. And I've known him since I was 16. And if I told you that Mark, no, actually, I'm not going to try and even explain that story live on air. You know what?
Right.
Mark, I can leave you to explain what pas de deux is. And over to you.
I just had a flashback, dropping people, probably you. Okay, let's code in there. Oh, yes. So, morning, good to see you again. Yeah, tell you a little bit about me. You know what? It's interesting because I've had, probably like you, a very eclectic background in career. In fact, I've had kind of many careers. In my 50s now, so still young.
Stop giving my age away.
Oh no. I didn't make a connection with that. There you go. But you know what? Very eclectic background. Like you, I was an actor for many, many years. So 15 years as an actor. And that was a big passion when I was in my 20s and in my 30s. And I did a whole bunch of other stuff, which I can kind of get into during that time. But then when we had our first kid, I got out of the acting world and I went into the corporate world, which is it was very, very different from what I was used to. But I led a lot of large digital products for like the BBC and Microsoft and Telegraph. And then I left that world. And then I got into the startup space, which was really cool, techs and startups. And then I do what I do today, which is run a coaching business, and I got a production company. But I think when I think back to when I was an actor, and the thing that probably inspired me and changed my life in a big way in terms of what I do now. There was a friend of mine, he was called Steve Rogers, not Captain America, Steve Rogers. And I shared a flat with Steve, and Steve didn't do small talk. And he was always coming up with new ideas. And I was kipping on his couch. I was unemployed actor at the time. I was actually working in the Prince Edward Theatre Bar. Crazy for You was on. I actually got on the show the year later, but I was unemployed at the time. Steve burst into the room one day and he said, "Mark, remember these 20 words." And I was like, all right. Now, I don't know if you remember, but I didn't have a reputation for having that good a memory. When it came to lines and stuff, I was really good. Everything else, I was all over the place. In fact, my focus was everywhere. My memory was actually good. I didn't realize it at the time. Steve gave me these 20 words. I memorized about 4. It was appalling. It was not good. And then he shared a technique. And this technique literally changed the course of my life. And it was a memory technique. Now, back then, no one had really heard of this stuff. He did the technique. I remembered all 20 words, like in sequence. And he'd go, number 16, I'd say space shuttle. And it was right. It blew my mind. Long story short, it kickstarted a journey for me when I got into memory techniques. And a year later, my agent called me up and, you're an actor. As actors, you never say no to anything. Can you ride a horse? Yes. Like you learn to ride the horse, right? And she called me up and I was actually in the show, Crazy for You at the time. It was a year later. And she said, "Mark, you've always got lots of ideas," which I did. My head was just full of them. And she said, "I've got a friend, production company called Action Time, looking for a game show. Any ideas?" I was like, yes, give me half an hour. And I just wrote this tirade of like text, A4 paper, no computer back then, didn't have a lot of money. And it was just pencil, wrote this game show, sent it in. Long story short, it got picked up. So it was on the BBC. It was called Monkhouse's Memory Masters, 1995. Ironically, no one remembers it. Do you remember it?
I remember it.
You remember
because I remember we just bumped into each other. So 95, I was back in London and we were, funny enough, drinking. That's bad, isn't it? I think you must have been, you'd come from the show and we were on Macready's and you told me about it. And so I watched it and so did my whole family.
Yeah. And it was a crazy time. And it really, it was, I mean, I didn't know what I was doing. I was completely winging it. I created this game show. I was on there with Bob as well. And it was all kind of kicking off. I thought, what am I doing? But it did throw me into this kind of world of memory. And there was a guy called Tony Bazan, the late Tony Bazan. And it's over 100 books. He's a creator of mind maps. And I met Tony back in the 90s. And we had this conversation and he said, "Mark, you have to compete in the World Memory Championships." And I thought, what is this and why do I need to do this thing? And he said, you know, the first game will give you a 2,000 digit number. You have 1 hour, memorize as many digits as you can. I thought, that sounds crazy. Why would I want to do this? But I did. And I got quite good at this stuff. I was ranked as one of the first grandmasters of memory in the world. Crazy title, but it's a real thing. Third in the world. So that really started a development journey that's continued over the last, I was going to say 25 years. It's not, it's 30 years, right? The last 30 years. And it started with memory. And then I started training people and working with people. So I've worked with people for 30 years. You know, now I run a coaching business and a training business as well. And it's what I do. But back then it was always something I was doing on the side. And I've done that for a very, very long time. And it started with memory, but then it was about focus and productivity and working with people to achieve career goals or businesses and all sorts of other stuff. But there you go. There's a little backdrop, some flavor of why I do what I do. Why am I here?
But I love that, because you're right, and I think people don't realize that. Yeah, on one of these episodes, I was asked, "What other skills do actors have?" And I was like, "Wow." They're not just people who can prance around on stage and maybe learn a few lines. Actually, they know how to set deadlines. They know how to achieve a goal. They have studied and they understand a lot of structure, business. I was like, do you know what? And one of the biggest things we know is how to sell ourselves. And we really do know about sales. And they were like, but how do you know all of this? I went, what do you think an actor has to do? I mean, I've always joked about an actor only opens the curtains in the afternoon because it gives them something to do. But that's just not the case, is it? Although we've all been there dossing on people's couches, absolutely penniless, waiting for that next job and doing all the fill-in jobs. But those fill-in jobs, just like you, they shape us.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you could touch about what maybe was the worst fill-in job you've ever done.
Oh, so many. I had so many. You know what? In my younger days, before I kind of started, you know, in the later 90s, I had my own business. So I was doing that in between jobs. But in the early days, there was one, the worst one. Oh, okay. I know what it was. It just came into my head. Telesales. Remember those telesales advert? Jeez. Okay. So it was a telesales job. And you're right. As an actor, you've got all these transferable skills. You know, you literally learn how to manage emotions and deal with stress and, you know, create confidence and all those sort of things. And I was always really good at getting jobs because I could just wing it in the interview. And I'd never done any kind of sales in my life. And we did this telesales job, but this was not a good job. I mean, this company, you know, it really should not have been around. And we were selling, it was the time when there was a big thing about how computer screens were impacting your vision. Right. And so they'd be selling these screens that sat on the screens, but it was a real scam. And we'd call people up and we had this script, and you'd get to the point where you'd get to the CEO, you'd be having the conversation with the CEO. They think they're getting something for free and it's all this whole thing. And then you land them with like a 10K check and you just go, can I have your credit card? It was a crazy thing. But I actually left that on the same day because my ethics, even though I was an actor, right? My morals would not let me do that gig. I thought, I cannot do this. I was out. So that's probably the worst one.
I did Encyclopedia Britannica and pounded the streets.
Yeah.
I mean, what can you say? And I can say I sold every single type of Britannica, you know, encyclopedia, the range, and then I got out there because I just wanted to complete the entire range and know that I could do it. And then I was out. It was.
I learned so much.
So, along the way, you've talked about. I think you mentioned Steve, but who else has inspired you along the way?
You know, a lot of people. So Steve, you know, I tend to have, I guess, people that I meet in my life where sometimes we'll end up collaborating. So I've had quite a few collaborators. There was, I guess, an actor that I worked with. We did Chorus Line together, then we did Scrooge, and then we ended up setting up a company. And we got the rights to Terry Pratchett's Weird Sisters. So I just phoned Terry's agent up one day, Colin Smythe. And I was like, yeah, we're producers. And we want to put on a West End production of Weird Sisters. I'd love to buy the rights. And we did, and we got the rights. And so there's always been these collaborations that have happened. Certain people that I've met, it was the same when I did my startup and a few businesses that I run. And there's certain people that I meet and we end up doing something together. I'd say outside of that, I mean, obviously my wife, I can't, because, I've known Zoe's an actor, and she's been doing that since she was a kid, probably like you, and very young when she started. And she actually works down. She's working right now below us. So we've got a studio in Sevenoaks. She's downstairs running Pilates right now. She's got all the reformer kit. But I think together we keep each other straight. We keep each other's kind of head on, and making sure that we're going in the right direction. So she's also been a big part of the last, how many years? Okay, 2024 years. Okay, there you go. So it's quite a while. And then, there's other people that I guess have influenced me in terms of what I do. When I was really young, I got into Tony Robbins, and I did that in my 20s. And I was like, oh, okay, I start to learn about some of those coaching strategies. But then when I was in the BBC, I had a great manager there, Matt, and he was brilliant. And I started to understand more about running teams and high performance teams and things like that. So there's been key people, I'd say, throughout my life that have had an impact. And many of these people I kind of still see, still interact with.
What was it like, though? I mean, I know what it was like for me, and I talk about it openly, what it was like to make that decision to move from being the actor, the performer, and go into the corporate space, because that's where we have a real crossover, because I did exactly the same thing. What was it like? What was the decision process?
Absolutely crazy. I remember it. Okay, I've never shared that story. So I remember the moment it happened, because we were having our first kid, Zach, and myself and Zoe at the time, none of us wanted to tour. There was work out there, and you can get a West End gig, and that's great. But actually, none of us wanted to tour. I wanted to be there. I thought, well, I don't want to be away for 6 months or a year when I got a kid. And so there was that moment there. But I always remember I taught myself how to code websites many years before. So I was like building websites. I was kind of doing stuff on the side. But when I first got into corporate, the first gig was the BBC. And I think maybe me and Zoe had a debate about something. And I thought, screw it, I'm just going to get a gig. And I wrote in, and I got this gig, contracting initially for the BBC. And so that was when it started. And when I got in there, it was temporary. In my mind, this was not what I was doing. I did not make a decision to be in the corporate space. It was not how I was built. Like, I was pretty unorganized, if I'm honest, I was last minute with everything. It's like, this was not, very different to people who know me now. It's like, really? Like, with what I do? But it was not my natural go-to state. But then I kind of got caught up. I actually really enjoyed it. And I started building websites, and then they offered me a job, and I thought, oh, well, okay, I'll take it. I'll take the gig. It reluctantly took the first gig. And then they promoted me. And I thought, I don't want to get promoted because I don't want to be here. I want to. And then they promoted me again, and I got promoted again. I was like, what's going on? Then, 6 years later, and I end up, I was leading all these big products for the BBC. And then I went to Microsoft, and I led a Skype website, and then a Telegraph. So it was like, it caught up on me. It was a slow burner. But I will say that it was probably, I learned so much there. I got to the point where I knew it wasn't the right fit for me. I had to go back to what I was doing. I was still running my business. I always had a side hustle. I was always coaching and working with companies. But I got to the point where I realized I had to leave and get back to what I really wanted to do and what I thought I was here to do. So it was an interesting time, but learned so much particularly about leadership and high performance and teams and etc. You get to put it into practice.
So explain about your coaching, because it's high performance, it's leadership. And, we both, I love the fact that our journeys are kind of got this snaky, wonky, pivoting, I don't know, crazy old path that got us to where we are today. But talk to me about what you actually do as in your coaching.
Yeah. So there's a few different types of people that I work with. And I guess in terms of the outcomes that they're looking for, I tend to think of it in 3 buckets. So I work with people who are either trying to move up in their career, or they want to shift career entirely, particularly off the back of COVID. I don't know if you've seen this, but I mean, you heard about the Great Resignation 2.0, and lots of people becoming dissatisfied with where they are. So a lot of the clients that I work with, they're making a shift. They tend to be more senior management up to C-suite, and they're making, let's say, bigger changes. So it takes them a long time to do that. And I also have group programs that are run for people who maybe, they don't want to do the one-to-one stuff, but they still want to make a shift. So that's kind of one bucket of people that I work with. The second bucket are usually founders, CEOs, and there's two types of coaching that I do there. One is more around right thing, right time, productivity, high accountability, high ownership, follow through, get this stuff done, because their lives are just so crazy. They've got a lot going on. And the other type of coaching I do with them is I partner with someone called Ash Maurya. So he wrote all the Running Lean books. I actually, one of his coaches when he needs to, and he'll give me startups. It's all work with founding teams. And that's more about business modeling and traction. I got a big product background. So it's a different type of coaching. We're looking at their actual business and how they grow their business. But we always get into the mind stuff because you can't not. And the third type of person I work with are usually people who want to improve generally when it comes to things like productivity. I mean, I see similar challenges all the time. Procrastination, the killer. I mean, it comes up all the time, obviously. Some of the obvious one. Perfectionism, interestingly, comes up a lot with the people that I work with. I just need to get it right? And they don't progress. Distractions. We live in this distracted world. We're creatures of distraction. I read this paper, 2018, Ian Felber-Korn. They did an experiment on macaque, monkeys, and humans, and discovered that as humans, we go in and out of attention 4 times every second. Now, this made a lot of sense to me. So, that was why I was so unfocused. Right? We're built to be distracted. So distractions is a real killer when it comes to productivity. And then you've got the emotional stuff of overthinking, overwhelm, imposter syndrome, confidence, etc. So these are the kind of challenges that I'll help people work through. But then practically, you're helping people to achieve something that they want to achieve, that they think is going to make them feel more fulfilled.
And you've written books, right? You're not just a coach. You're not just an actor. You're not just a dad. You're also a published. I'm running a production company, and I love the name of the production company. We're going to come on to that in a minute. You're also a published author, right?
Yeah. So Hodder is my publisher and Nick Hearn. So I've got a number of books out there. I've got a couple of memory books, the Memory Workbook and Improve Your Memory, Sharpen Your Focus, which I did with Hodder. And as you can probably guess, the title is focused on memory, but it's very practical. I'm very much a practitioner. When I started doing all this memory stuff, I didn't really want to compete in championships and do all that. I mean, look, I value it in terms of the skill that you build. I was much more interested in how do I use this in my life? For those moments when I remember stuff on the fly, there's a conversation, or whether it's I want to learn a whole new skill set. And that's really what kind of inspired me and got me going. So the books really talk to that idea. And then I wrote one book a few years back called Learning Your Lines. And this was a real passion project. And Nick Hearn is the publisher of that one. So Nick Hearn, biggest acting publisher in the UK. And I love writing that book. It was my favorite book to write. And I do have another book that I'm just starting, kind of the research stage, which is all about superhuman productivity and how do you kind of make that happen for you, bring that into your life.
And can you expand a bit further on that or not?
No, I can't. It's the books at the early stages, but the principles I've been putting into practice for many years now with people. And, I attend, whenever I talk about productivity, and it sounds a bit hypey, superhuman productivity, but there's a reality behind it because I tend to think of this in 3 chunks. That there's 8 levers. Whenever I help people want to improve their productivity, I always talk about 8 specific levers that if you're able to dial up, your productivity in a whole is going to go through the roof. You're also going to feel more balanced. These are things. The first one's about activating your inner superpower. And this is about your focus, your memory, being able to create and break habits. Because when you can do those things, i.e. keep attention, do the deep work, not get distracted by all the to-do list stuff, but the stuff that creates impact, you start to move forward. When you can learn quickly, make things stick, this is this kind of stuff that I did in the memory championships, people go, what? That's impossible. But it's not. Like, we can all do it. Everyone can improve the memory and learn things that are of value to you. And they're just that thing of being able to design habits. So that's the first chunk. The next chunk is all around creating a productivity, let's say, system or routine that works for you. We're all different. I was very last minute. Some people are super structured. You need, not one size does not fit all. You need to work stuff that works for you. And the last area is really focused around your ability to regulate emotions. Now, as actors, we were doing this. This is where we lived, right? We were creating emotions, and you can't force that stuff. You can't push it. There's ways to have emotion happen to you, whether it's a positive emotion or whether it's a negative one. And once you understand that and you're able to take control of that, hey, this gives you a huge amount of resilience in your life. So, I mean, there's the kind of shape of it. I haven't written it yet, but, you know, it's that's the shape of it.
I love it. So I talk about this thing called AIM a lot, which is you acknowledge, you identify, and you move on. And it comes from a parenting course that I was on, but I've switched it because I wanted to make it work for me. And I genuinely tell people that you've got to acknowledge the emotion. So you don't, because a lot of time people, particularly when it comes to public speaking, they try to squish this emotion down. And if you squish it down, it's going to come out like a firework, and it's going to explode everywhere. So I say to people, you've got to acknowledge that emotion. And once you can acknowledge it, you can then identify that actually it's okay because I'm speaking today and I'm just nervous, or it's okay because I'm going to the doctors and I'm getting test results and I'm nervous, or whatever it is. You can identify why you're nervous, and then you can take that breath and you can move on. So I love what you've just talked about, which of course brings me on to your production company and your name for the production company, because you didn't just grow. I mean, you live in Sevenoaks now, but you're not from Sevenoaks originally.
Oh, you can tell, right? I mean, the kids have got Sevenoaks accents. So where I come from, we call it posh, but there you go. They're RP, very articulated. Or, you know what? When I come from Mastrick in Aberdeen. Hi to anyone that lives in Mastrick. And, you know, I had a great upbringing. My school was pretty rough, if I'm honest. I went to, you know, and I kind of hacked through my what you call GCSEs now. I kind of scraped through it. It was an interesting time. But yeah, I came from Maastricht. When I first came down, no one understood a word I was saying. I don't know if you can remember this, but I also used to speak slang. I thought you got feet D and I, you got to do tune, right? No one understood what I was saying.
I just understood all of that. You know, that's fine.
Anyone who's Scottish right now is saying, that's a weird accent you've got.
How are you doing? Say it again. How are you doing?
Fidian, how you doing?
How you doing? I remember the Chaban Noir bit.
You know, it's probably so bad. Anyone who, my friends from a kid, they're going, what? Stop it right now. Anyway, so my production company, I set this up a couple of years ago, and obviously there's a thread here from when I was an actor to what I do today. And, you know, my first startup that I created, well, it wasn't my first actually, but it was, I think, my third startup that I did was called Blink, with a Q. And it was a live streaming game show. It was essentially HQ trivia, but it was aimed at GCSE students who want to study. And we did a show every day to help the kids. And so that kind of got me back into the kind of production space. And then I went to NFTS, National Film Television School. And I thought, hey, I need to build some skills to produce. And I realized it was very much like being a product person, you know, to build that skill set. And so a couple of years ago, there was an opportunity to produce something. And it was video production initially. There's two parts of the production company. One is video production. And I thought, what can I call this? I want to call it something that means something. And I thought, I'm going to call it Mastrick Productions. It means nothing to anyone else, but to me, it means a lot because it's a little nod to where I come from. And yeah, so that was the trigger for it. But, you know, there's a film production side that I'm working on, which is very early. And, you know, right now I'm just getting scripts in and building a slate. And, you know, but the world is not hugely dissimilar to when you go through the startup journey and you get investment, and then you bring something to market and you've got to get out there, etc. So package things up. It's very, very similar. So there you go. Juggling many
no,
things.
you're not. I just love the fact that you just never stop. You never stop moving. And of course, I understood the Doric. Was it Doric or slang?
I mean, Doric is from up there, but I guess we term it as slang now. I don't know if that's insulting now. It might be. I don't know.
I don't know. I did invite some people from Aberdeen onto the feed, so I'll no doubt I will find out.
Oh, really? Okay.
So Malik Tusef has joined us, and he said to say hello. And then
hello.
Magnus Faith, is this one of your friends, Magnus Faith? This is great stuff for Understand Your Productivity Program, Mark. And then Yemi, who is also he's brilliant. He's been on I can't remember what episode, a couple of episodes ago. I tell people quite often that one of the key skills to improve your memory retention is through learning to forget. For example, do you have to keep a phone number in your memory nowadays? What's Mark's thoughts on this?
No. So I'm super practical. Yeah, I'm a practitioner. I love reading the research. I read all the research out there. I know. Yeah. Thing about memory techniques is funny. They've been around for 2,000 years, and it's only the last 5 years that's been some specific research that's talked to what's actually happening with the kind of techniques that I teach. But in terms of things like phone numbers, no, I'm not going to bother doing that because I've got my phone. Like I would have done before the phone existed, but I don't do that. And I'm a big geek. I love tech. I want to spend my time memorizing things that will create impact. For me, as a coach, when I'm doing a coaching session, I don't take notes. I memorize what's been said. I lay things down. It allows, you'll know this, it's about, deep listening mode, active listening, and I'll use a little creative technique where I'll create a picture for the key problems people have said. Never share your pictures. The key problems people have, the desired outcomes they want to achieve, the actions that you're going to take, because then you can play that stuff back. I used to do that in meetings when I was in the corporate world as well. People would say, you're not making any notes. Then you play a bunch of stuff back. They go, oh, it's weird. But there's something about forgetting as well. Our memory is fallible. It's fluid. We can mess with a memory. We can create false memories. And it's okay to not to be able to recall something straight away or even forget something. In line with that, though, there's a habit that most people have. They'll try to remember something and immediately they'll say, I can't remember. I've forgotten. When you say that, your brain stops searching. When in actual fact, what you should do is give yourself a beat, give yourself a moment and ask yourself, okay, what do I think this is? Even if I was to guess, or you know what, that'll come back to me. Create that habit, you start to remember way more. And that's a really simple thing to do because you're just priming your brain. You're directing it. It's like when you meet someone on the street, can't remember them. 2 days later, oh, it was Kirsty.
I love it. That's I'm visual, and I tell people I'm sure you've seen it where I've said, ditch the script. In fact, I sent you an email. Don't write this down. We're going to wing this. It's all improv.
Obviously.
I have no idea where. I don't even know my questions are this morning. And it's about keeping it fluid. It's about keeping everything fresh. And I use active listening, but I'm a big visual person, and all of my videos are done with me thinking about visuals. I do write a few notes, but because I'm dyslexic, I've got no hope of spelling. So it's normally a doodle that has on the page that will remind me of what it is. And my memory, if I lost my memory, I would be gutted because I can bring up, Dennis hates this, I can bring up an argument from years ago and quote the wording. And he's like,
what a great skill.
How would you do that? And I was like, but you said, and he's like, did I really? Uh-huh. I love this. So this is where the tables turn. You've been in the hot seat for about, I don't know, nearly 29 minutes.
Look at that. That was quick.
I know it flies by. People don't believe me that 29 minutes. People don't believe me that this is quick, and I love doing this. It's so much fun for me on a Friday morning, except this bit. So this is where you get to turn the tables.
I get to turn tables. Yeah, I see some stuff.
Yeah, you get to ask me a question.
Okay. Let me think of a good one. Well, we've known each other for a long time, since the 80s. John Hughes. Since the 80s. So, okay. A simple question. to ask, maybe not so simple to answer. When you think about the journey you've been on, maybe particularly in your business, the businesses, the things that you've done in your life, and like me, you've done a whole bunch of different things. What's the one key lesson that you would take from your life and share with someone else to make a difference for them? What would that be?
So it has to be, don't plan too far. That probably sounds really strange, but you don't know what's going to come in the future, and you don't know. So when you met me at 16, we were full of ideals. I was going to be an actor. I don't know where I was going to go, but I knew that that's what I was going to do. And I did it for many, many years. I thought I was going to get to the RSC. I never got to the RSC, and Shakespeare was definitely my passion, but I did get on TV, which I hadn't planned. And then I didn't plan to get divorced and find myself back in London and wake up one day without my career because of various different things. And so, overnight, when I moved back from Scotland back down to England, I lost my career. I didn't plan to then go back to university, so back to arts. I didn't plan to then go into the corporate world. And I certainly didn't plan to get really high up in the corporate world and then turn it all on its head, because I decided, my husband and I, B came into our lives. And then from B coming into our lives, I didn't plan that Dennis would get a big job and one of us would have to be the person ready to collect her from school. And so I didn't plan to launch KVTB. So I would say, 1, don't plan, and 2, never stop learning, because you've got to be able to be adaptable. You've got to be able to be resilient, and you've got to be able to flex. And I think the flex of Wu Wei is a really important thing for me, because you've got to be able to bend and not break. And so you've got to be resilient. And sometimes you will find yourself right down at that black bottom. And I've been there, where you're just going, I've got no money, I've got no future, I'm stupid, I am not worthy. I have gone right down to that depth where I thought I was totally useless. And now I look at my life and I'm a mum, I'm running my own business, I have a beautiful husband, and I do my best to help and pay the support and love and kindness that I've received with gratitude forward. So I think even if you're right down at the depths, looking at that black dog going, I have no idea, I will say that you can hit that bottom and you can bounce back up. So don't plan, don't wallow either, find your way out. But and the other thing is to ask for help. Ask for help.
That's a great one.
Help. So I think that's probably it, if that's a good enough answer.
I love it. There was so much there. You got don't plan, the continuous learning, that resilience, and ask for help. Love it. Brilliant.
There you go. As I said, I have no idea where my brain's going to go, and it's all improv, right?
All yes, and
thank you so much for joining me. It's been a blast. Oh, brilliant. We've just had a quick new message from Jill Geik. I always worry about saying that wrong. Morning, great insights here. She's a goal setting coach. So thank you for everyone who's joined us. Mark, thank you.
Thank you, Kirsty. I've loved this. This has been great fun. Cheers. No, seriously, it's brilliant.